Hey, what's up everyone? Adam here. Welcome to the 7th episode of the Naus cEDH podcast, Gatekeeping and Who Has the Keys. Joining me today is my co-host, Kian, otherwise known as Barles.
Yo, yo, yo.
New to the podcast, Mike, better known as Shadow Z.
How's it going, everyone?
And returning to the pod, Bryce, or better known as Valium.
This guy.
Before we get started, we have a few triggers to resolve in our upkeep. First up, shout out to our patrons, and thank you to everyone who supports us. Special thanks to Granddad and Cold Ramen, our $25 supporters, and Geo Justin for being our $50 supporter. You can find our Patreon link in the description below if you would also like to become a patron. We are now available on all major podcast platforms. If you're listening on YouTube, in the description below are our links to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our Discord. Our Discord has been growing every week, and we're up to 70 members currently, so please come and join us. In other big news, I, Poppyphobia, have been participating in the MLC, and it's been going great. I've really been holding down the team by going 0-2 throughout my gameplay debut.
Woo! Taking L's like a champ.
Yes, putting the sad in sad Naus. Some other really exciting news is I will also be guest starring on Mental Misplay's stream Tuesday, July 19th, playing with Alan, Mikey, and Rose. You can also find me participating in Punt City August 27th through the 28th in Pennsylvania. It's a cEDH tournament hosted by Eminence Gaming. The tournament has currently sold out and has over $4,000 in prize support, which is amazing for the community, so come and find me there. And finally, November Oktoberfest, that's such a mouthful.
I like Thanksgiving better.
It's happening November 18th through the 20th in Philadelphia. And that is another cEDH tournament hosted by Monarch Gaming. And most of us at Naus are planning to attend. Monarch will be releasing the tickets soon, so make sure to come and grab some to come jam some games with us. Now, to get into the topic of today's episode. Gatekeeping is an inherent problem that exists in the game of Commander. A lot of emotions, opinions, and ideas are involved when playing this format that can lead to a lot of issues. But what actually is gatekeeping? So, to define gatekeeping, I have the dictionary definition. We did this with the last episode. I think it helped us a lot to establish kind of a common ground for what this topic is about. So I'll read the dictionary definition of gatekeeping here. Yeah, the king-making episode. All right, so for gatekeeping, the definition of gatekeeping is the activity of controlling and usually limiting general access to something. So, in regards to cEDH, limiting access to the format as a whole, which, clearly we think is an inherent problem because we're talking about it today. So, I think we're going to start off with you, Mike. What are some questions that you have for us regarding gatekeeping?
So one of the first things that I have for you guys is, does having a community, a competitive EDH gatekeep or annex a majority of the Commander player base?
Could you run that one by me again?
Does having a competitive EDH gatekeep or annex a majority of the Commander player base?
What are your thoughts on that, Kian? I gotta think on mine.
I can go first. So I think what you're saying is, does having a competitive format for Commander, so EDH as a competitive format, does that gatekeep or annex a majority of the Commander player base? I think that kind of does annex a whole large subset of the community when you consider that some people don't want to or are intimidated by competitive play. When you consider that you're separating like regular EDH with competitive EDH, a lot of people get turned off to the idea that you have to be playing on edge the entire time that you're playing the game, or you have to be constantly wary or aware or thinking of play patterns ahead of time. Like, it's really intimidating to play this format. And I think sometimes just the name cEDH can really annex a whole group of people.
I'm pretty sure that's the intent of it too. Because, the C is like, hey, we're EDH, but we're separate. It's kind of part of the goal of cEDH. Like, let's get all these casual players over in their own corner and put ourselves in our own corner. That way we can play with like-minded people.
It's almost like it's an inherent, it's a systematic gatekeep.
Yeah.
Like, you're
trying to systematic annex the casual players away from the cEDH players.
You're essentially cutting off the fat of the player base for those that want to play the competitive nature of the game.
Yeah, and it is kind of like I wouldn't say like a mountain to climb, but kind of along those same lines for like a casual player that kind of wants to get into the format, but they don't really know like what competitive is. Because I know many of us have played like other 60 card formats, which is really competitive, and you try to think like 2 to 3 turns ahead. And in EDH, it's really hard because it's not one-on-one. You have 3 other players besides yourself to worry about, so it's kind of hard to guess play patterns and like try to like produce a mindset that allows you to either think ahead or allows you to like, I wouldn't like guess play patterns or something along those lines.
I think like something that we're trying to establish is that it's clearly purposeful. So someone is clearly like with calling it cEDH, it's purposeful to separate ourselves, because I think it comes into like the whole idea of like the rule zero of cEDH and how we come with an expectation and we come with some guidelines that like when you sit down at a table, this is what we're playing, right?
We're trying to win.
Yeah.
But I think that can be really, really, what's the word that I'm looking for? Intimidating maybe to new players. And I think it's unwelcoming to new players to our format.
1,000%.
I agree.
And I think that, not like that the name is inherently wrong, because I like the name cEDH. I think it sounds sick. I think it sounds cool. But I think that there's almost like an inherent stigma that comes with it.
I think also you have to take into consideration, just kind of going along with the points you're saying, the perspective that they're taking. Like, if you're playing your mono red aggro deck every single week at a casual tournament, and with casual, you do have players that bring somewhat, not exactly competitive, but like high power decks. They just want to win, but they're not good enough to take their own competitive. They'll just come every week, curb stomp you, right? And you're like, why would I want to go play competitive? It's just more of these guys. But it's not so much that you're coming at it and you're at one level and they're at like 6 levels above you, and it's like, whoa, that's an overwhelming power difference. When you're all coming in with the same mindset, you're all playing at a generally similar power level. So that huge distance isn't as pronounced. And I think people think that there is that huge distance to climb.
Yeah, like the stigma is what people are viewing, when in reality it's not like that at all. There's a mutual understanding and a mutual respect at the table, but because there's this already pre-existing notion or idea that this is what cEDH is, people are scared of that and intimidated by that, and they don't want to try the format even in the first place. I know that when we go to our LGSs and we play on Friday nights and we run like this little cEDH community at our local LGS, there's a whole other side of the building that it's just casual players, and they almost like look to us like we are aliens, like we're weird because we play competitively and at a high level. And I think that is kind of, I wish that it wasn't the case, and I wish that there was more of an understanding that like, hey, we play the same game, but we play it with a different rule zero or a different expectation at the table, and that if you ever want to try that, come in and try it, and we can donate or help or give you a deck to try, and it would make that stigma kind of go away. But it's really hard to do that when millions of people have this mindset. Yeah. Mike, you got something to say?
I can say for sure that that's the case with our LGS, at least, because I have a lot of people from the casual side that do tell me, hey, we want to get into cEDH, but the stigma is there. I do know some people that do have a personal experience of the stigma. That's like, okay, well, I don't want to play this because of past experience, and that, like, we can get into that later on.
Well, like a pub stomper is going to ruin that.
It's going to ruin the experience, and
it's
like
going to give you a really bad taste in the mouth.
Yeah, when casual players think of cEDH, typically, like when you ask them, what are your issues with cEDH? It's always, it's a turn 2 to 3 format, and yes, decks can win turn 2 to 3. But it's a lot more like meat of the game in those first couple turns.
I know, like James Scrollmob, he's the guy that did the cEDH metagame project where he analyzed like how the format breaks down, how games go, and things like that. And like the average cEDH game ends on like turn 6 or 7. And like when you think of casual games end on like turn
15.
No, not even. Casual games are ending on turn 8 or 9.
Really?
It's not that much of a difference. Think about it. A whole rotation around the table. Like, all of a sudden, some dude's got 5, 10 elves out and a crater hoof. It's not that hard to do on turn 10.
Yeah, so power creep of cards has really come a long way.
It's brought casual to a level that cEDH kind of used to be at when we started. I remember in 2015, when you're playing a cEDH deck, Like, sure, certain decks can get there really fast and whatever, but it was also just like, let's see how fast I can drop the Crater Hoof. Let's see how fast I can try to go off and win here. Whereas, like, nowadays, like, that 2015 cEDH is now 2022 casual because the power creep is just so large.
100%. I see it every time that I go off and play casual here and there, where it's just, hey, you know what? By turn 6, someone's already getting ready to Crater Hoof. And it's like, okay, well, you know...
The format's not that different, you know? We're all playing the same cards. Like, you know, your mono red Pirates deck runs a Dockside in it. So does my cEDH deck. You know what I mean? We're all playing the same cards. We're just playing them a different way. And I think that there's just this overwhelming idea that cEDH is some big, scary town that if you walk into, you're going to get stomped on immediately.
I feel that that's the general stigma behind it, is that there is this giant monster behind cEDH that the casual folks look up to us kind of as the monsters, like you said, Adam. Whereas, you know, we don't want to play with these guys because it is the turn 2, turn 3 format where the game's over before they even can play the game.
Yeah. I mean, that's the dream. I want to go off turn 2, but everybody has interaction, so it's like...
Never works out.
It never works out.
And everyone's playing at that speed. It just turns into a Western shootout.
Basically.
You have to wait. Like, all right, who wants to go first?
Reference flash meta.
Yeah.
You gonna do it? You gonna do it?
No gemstone? Okay.
I think that's like...
There's no flash anymore. We're good.
All right.
Thank God.
I think that's a fun conversation to have, is just like, does cEDH itself carry an inherent gatekeeping type of tonality to it?
Despite being there.
I think, though, that's kind of a real generalization, right? And I think that we can get a little bit more specific about the actual gatekeeping that exists in our community. So, Bryce, I think you've got something that you'd like to say.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about gatekeeping as like, power levels. There's also the huge financial burden, right? So my question is, what are your guys' opinions about the financial requirements of cEDH and how this creates a barrier for new players? Is this a form of gatekeeping, or is this just a requirement of the game? And as a follow-up question, is this something that we as a player should accommodate?
So when you say like financial burden, do you mean like the cost of playing the game?
Yeah, so say take your average cEDH deck, you're looking at minimum, I would say $2,000 to $5,000.
Average more likely is $5,000.
Yeah,
like that's like
it's been going up.
Yeah, and I think that for one is a huge, like, I don't know if gatekeeping. It's a huge burden on a player, and especially a new player, to say, hey, you want to play this format? Give me $5,000, and then I'll give you this fragile deck that you don't want to shuffle because your cards are so expensive, and say, here you go, now let's play the game. I think that can definitely be interpreted as kind of a gatekeeping, like it's like when we look back at the definition of gatekeeping, right? It says controlling or limiting access to something.
Yeah.
Financial limitations are a huge problem in cEDH, and you are limiting access to the game because someone can't afford a deck to even play. So I know that in the meta, right, of the cEDH mindset, the general hive mind idea is that, we're cool with proxying cards. If you can't afford it, proxy it, and we'll let you play whatever you want to play when you want to play it, because we know that there's that financial burden. The problem is that doesn't exist IRL. And what I mean by that is, like, when you go to a game store, a lot of game stores have proxy rules that you can't proxy. Yeah. And it's hit or miss wherever you go. It's 50-50. One game store is like, sure, play what you want because we just want you to play. And another game store might say, no proxies allowed.
We want your business.
Exactly, yep. Which I don't think is inherently wrong, but it does kind of gatekeep the format in a way where, like, I can't even go to my LGS and play because I can't afford a deck to play. And if I don't have a good enough deck, that goes back to our earlier question, well, I'm not good enough for cEDH, so why would I play?
And I think that's a problem with new players especially, because I know a couple players at our local LGS will come over and watch our games, and we'll fetch for like a duel, and I see their like facial expressions are like, oh, what?
You got a duel land now?
So it's kind of like, I think like newer players especially, at least to like the ones that are interested in cEDH, are like, okay, they're playing duels, that means I have to have these to play the game. And I think inherently, like, that's kind of true, but it's not, because you can still play, like, mono decks are still very prevalent and like are pretty
They're viable. They're good.
They're viable, but to play like all the flashy stuff that you see, like Blue Farm, Thrasios, TNT, Timnatana, all these 4-color decks
that are like $10,000 up.
plus.
Yeah.
I think
way more nowadays.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and I think that's what really, like, what they see, because that's mainstream, is like dual lands, all the best cards in every card you can play, because there's a ban list, but it's not really like a big ban list. Like, who cares if you can't play Power 9? I got all this other crap I can play.
That goes just as fast.
Yeah. So
from my own personal experience, I remember when I first started playing cEDH, like, I had a Slivers deck, like a 5-color Slivers deck, and I would bring it to the table, and I would feel like I didn't belong. Even though I have shock lands and fetch lands and mana rocks, but I didn't have, your mana crypts or your mox diamonds. I had signets and talismans, and I remember sitting at a table feeling like I didn't belong, because what I could afford was this, but what everybody else had was so much better. And I remember feeling the need, like, I have to spend money to play this game. Yep. Otherwise, I will never win and I'll never keep up. And I think that's a huge sign of gatekeeping, because and what's funny is it's hard, because how do you solve that problem? You can't, because cards are expensive, right? And you have to play those cards, or you don't have to play them, but it does directly impact your deck's performance to play those cards. So inherently, like, it is gatekeeping, because people can't afford that. How are they going to play?
And I think there's two sides of the coin. There's one side that LGS is, like you were saying before, LGS is allow proxies. They're like, okay, just play whatever. And I know most play groups are like, okay, yeah, you can play cEDH with us. I don't care. You can have written out proxies.
They care more if you're a good player than if you have a good wallet.
Yeah. I think at least our play group is, who cares how big your wallet is? We base other people, like...
We base our opinions on player skill.
Yeah.
And I think that with the other side of the coin is that an LGS is still a business, right? Yeah. So
they have to make money off singles and other...
Yeah, I think we've talked to a lot of LGS owners where they say, like, games and play days and stuff like that are not where the profit's made. It's on the amount of cards that I sell, specifically sealed and single products. So, like, I understand the rules of, like, hey, no proxies allowed, whatever. But it sucks when it comes to, like, tournament play. When you're trying to play in a tournament and you're like, I've been playing Timna Thrasios online for months, but I can't afford $15,000 to buy a deck.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to go to this tournament and I have to eliminate all the cards I've been practicing with, because I can't afford a Mox Diamond for $700. I can't afford an LED for $600. Mm-hmm. So how am I going to play the game? And I know that some places, like Monarch specifically, has been giving out playtest cards and trying to help people with that issue, but it's still an inherent issue. And I think that cost basis is a big problem in the format.
I do want to address the second half of that. So as a game store, you have to make money. That's just how you stay afloat. I don't think we can really judge a game store. Like, oh, you make people actually have to play with real cards? It's like, yeah, that's how I make my money. But as a player, should we be accommodating that? Because, like, if I come in and I've spent like $6,000 plus on my deck, and someone walks up and they spent $20 to print all their cards, like, it's like, wow, I feel like I've been cheated. Why didn't I just spend $20?
I think that that's like, oh man, it's such a hard topic to discuss, because there is that feeling. There is, even I am all for proxying. I love proxying. I play proxy decks all the time when I want to try a deck before I buy a deck, and so on and so forth. But there is that feeling where, like, you get beat at a table by a guy who's got 100% printed out deck. And you're like, what the fuck, man? Like, I just spent $6,000 on my deck, and you whooped me with a FedEx trip. You know what I mean? Like, it feels really bad.
As someone that, it's no surprise to our group that I don't make as much as blah, 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 blah. But it's one of those things where, I came into the group with, at that time, Mad Farm, where half my deck was proxied. You guys allowed me to come in and play, and it's one of those things where I'm 100% behind proxying, but at the same time, it's one of those things where, like, I used to be where, okay, give it like 6 months of proxying. I want some progress on buying the deck and going from there. Otherwise, tear it apart and go off with something else. I think that that's where there's a good amount of leverage given a time frame on it, because then we can go from there as, okay, well, are you just using the proxies as a way to play, or is it that you're trying to build the money to buy the cards at that current time?
I don't even think there's an inherent problem with proxying in the first place. Like, I don't care if you have a proxy deck for 30 years and you're playing with that deck all the time. I think it's just like there is a sense of like a feel bad like to someone who did spend a ton of money, because it, like, as much as you love like playing EDH, like spending money feels bad regardless. And like
Absolutely.
sometimes like you sit in your room and you're like, man, I spent $600 on this piece of cardboard. What is wrong with me? You know what I mean? So it amplifies that when you're playing against someone who is being, I guess, maybe more financially responsible and just printing their cards since it's accepted by the community. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think like you don't need to put a restriction on it either. Like, oh, you can only proxy for 6 months and that should be an acceptable time frame. But I think that what you were saying earlier, like, don't put the onus on the game store, right? Like, it's not the game store's fault that these rules are in place, because WotC also enforces a lot of these rules.
Yeah.
But and as a business, you have to uphold a certain standard, right? I don't think it's the LGS's responsibility, maybe, to be as inclusive to the format, right? Like, they have to uphold their own standards and protect their store. So proxy rules are in place for that. I do think it's a player responsibility to be accepting and be like, hey, you might not have enough money to buy this deck, but you want to enjoy the format. I think it is up to us to say that's totally fair and you deserve to sit at the table with us.
100%.
But there's a lot of people in the community that don't think that way. And I think that's the gatekeeping problem, is there's a lot of people that want this to be a pay-to-win format. They want you to have to buy every card and play everything and physically own it.
Because I will say, right, if you force your opponents to own every single card, if you have a bigger wallet, there's an inherent advantage to that, and you can actually win more games because you're forcing them to play lower than, say, their skill level is.
Yeah, which I don't think is fair.
Yeah, and that's how my last play group was where it was everything was play to win. You have to have the real things, and it became one of those inherent, okay, well, people can't keep up because you have the people that on the side they're selling cards and whatnot as their own private store.
They can just afford more.
Exactly, they can afford more.
Yeah, and so I think that is a real problem in the format. And I think certain things, like when you consider like financial investments, right? So people who are doing buyouts on cards and like manipulating market prices on cards, they're almost like unintentionally or secondhand gatekeeping the format. Because now all of a sudden a card that just got printed that's getting bought out, something like Ledger Shredder, which is a $40 card, that's a good cEDH card. And
it's actually $21 for the full art. It dropped.
Oh, really? It's not that expensive. Well, foil?
Maybe foils, but
either way, it was like when it was
like
20
spiked
hard.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it spiked to like $27, and it's like shit. And there's already a barrier to entry now, even on the newest cards that are still in print to this day. Yeah. So it's really unfortunate that exists, and I do think it's a problem.
Yeah. So.
And there is one more thing that I want to bring up. So I'm being ingrained in cEDH. I am accepting of proxies, right?
Yeah.
But I do encourage people to still buy the cards. Like, eventually I'm like, yo, just pick up that card. I think there is a line where I encourage proxies up to a point where I'm like, you know what? You've been playing this for how long? Just start saving up and putting money towards this. Because I do encourage people to spend money on the game. Like, that's what
I do think that. Yeah, I do think that that's important. I think that eventually your goal should be to own your deck.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know, it feels good. It feels really rewarding to be like, I own my deck. When I bought every single piece to Jessica Ishai 100%, and I started buying foil pieces and things, it felt good because I'm like, wow, like I worked for this, and now I have this to show for it. Which is cool, and it's rewarding, and I think everybody should have that feeling. And it's cool to show up to a place that says no proxies allowed, and you're like, yeah, buddy, I know, I've got my deck here. You know, like there is some reward to that too.
That's kind of what I poked at a little bit ago with the whole 6 month thing. Like this quote unquote 6 month thing was something that I put on myself for one of my last decks, where it was, I'm going to give myself 6 months to buy the entire deck. That way, the proxies are gone, and people can actually see, hey, I'm not just holding out with all of this. And I understand that some people cannot do that, and that's 100% understandable, because you we're talking about here, there is a real gatekeep to the financial side of this game. Magic as a whole is gatecapped by the finances.
It's
in
not
some
just
way,
an
shape, or form.
EDH problem. It's
Exactly.
modern, legacy, vintage, Magic the
It's
Gathering.
modern or Magic as a game.
Yeah.
Even standard.
Yeah, there's
standard,
there's a YouTuber, I forget what his name is, but he always starts his videos with like, "Welcome, fine enjoyers of expensive luxury
Magic
cardboard."
historian.
Yeah,
Magic
Magic historian.
historian,
And
yeah.
I laugh so hard because it's a luxury hobby, right?
Yep.
And so it is. I think it's a Magic problem more than it's a cEDH problem. I think cEDH does a good job at mitigating the problem because they are so proxy friendly and work really really hard to make it affordable. But I do think that there's a stigma that exists, especially to newer players coming in. Like, I can't afford a Mox Diamond. I can't afford an LED. How am I going to play this game? And it's hard to try to say, like, well, you don't have to. You could just get a fake one, and we'll let you play with us.
Mm-hmm.
But to a lot of people, they don't want to play with fake cards. So
Yeah.
that is an issue that I think it's difficult to fix.
Yeah, and I don't have a solution for it, but it's just interesting to point out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'll always encourage people to just buy cards eventually.
Yeah.
I'm not going to set some hard and fast rule, but like I want to see what you can do, but I don't really want to see what your wallet can do.
Yeah. So, Kian, I think that you have another opinion on gatekeeping in cEDH.
So since we already covered like proxies, right? So say we can like everybody can play with proxies, whatever. So I want to talk about gatekeeping in terms of suboptimal card choices and play patterns a player can do, and what defines an optimal card or cards.
So, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so say I'm playing like a Grixis variant, but I'm not on Naus or Honorable Breach. And
I think those cards are hard to digest. I think just so we can bring it down, because different decks play on different archetypes.
Correct.
Let's just say we directly compare, because I know we were talking about it earlier, Serum Visions and Preordain.
Yep.
They are almost the same card, but one is slightly better than the other, right? Say someone wants to include the other one because the other. And I'm like, if we ignore financials, even though it's not that expensive, I feel like there's a certain point that unless something in your deck is playing on that difference, you should try and move to the better version.
Okay, so I think we need to reanalyze the question, right?
yeah, it was kind of a loaded question.
It was very
So,
loaded.
like
a
you're
baked
saying
potato.
You're saying like when it comes to cEDH,
Yep.
when you are building a deck or making card choices, people are going to criticize your choices and try to like tell you what you should be playing in your deck and calling them suboptimal choices and kind of stunting your creativity while you're building. Kind of telling you, why would you play that? That's not optimal when you could be on this card instead.
Yeah.
Why are you not on Naus? This is the best strategy in the format.
Correct.
You should be playing this.
And this ties into cEDH the C in cEDH could stand for community, because we're a hugely community-based format, and we're very like cEDH as a whole. Everybody has Discords. Everybody talks to each other. It's a hive mind. So when you have an idea like, hey, I want to be playing this card because XYZ, and you post it on Discord, everybody will be like, no, you need to play this optimized card that everybody's been playing for like 8 months now because it does the best thing that it can do. And you're stupid for thinking that card will do better than this card.
A good example of this that's really recent is a card like Deep Gnome Taromancer. So Deep Gnome Taromancer is that card where you can search your library for a plains whenever an opponent has 2 lands enter the battlefield at the same time. So like, or in the same
It's whenever
turn.
they cheat a land into play.
Yeah,
They're
so
not
like
playing,
when they
but
fetch,
yes.
if 2 lands enter the battlefield the same turn. So if you put down a fetch, then fetch, 2 lands have entered the battlefield, you get to search your library for a plains card and put it into play.
Yep.
So that card is pretty playable. Like a lot of people can play it, a lot of decks can utilize it. If you have a good basic land count, especially basic plains, it's really, really useful and helpful.
It also hits non-basics because it's just searching for the type.
Yes,
Yep.
but the
good
problem
card.
is that a lot of people don't think it's a good card.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are criticizing players for playing it in their decks. They're like, why the hell are you on the Deep Gnome Taromancer? That card fucking sucks. You have 3 planes in your deck, 3 fetchable targets for it. Get the fuck out of here. You don't know how to play cEDH. You don't know how to build your deck. And it's like, whoa, dude.
Back up.
That's one card choice in the deck, and it doesn't define my play patterns, or it doesn't define what my deck does. And I feel like people in the format really harp on the one card, right?
Yeah.
The one card in your deck that's bad. Why aren't you running Time Twister? Every blue deck should have a Time Twister in it, right?
And that brings back to like the second point of my question. What defines an optimized card?
Yeah, and I think that's a really
It is. I
a
think that
loaded
could be a
question.
question by
Loaded
itself.
question.
Yeah, but I think that's a good question to ask, because it's like, why are you defining what's optimal and suboptimal? Now, obviously, the community has come to a consensus that certain cards are optimal, right? But like when you think of an ad Naus strategy, like, okay, where do you start cutting the fat? Where is a 2 CMC card better than a 3 CMC card? Where do the statistics come into play? You have to analyze every little thing, every little stuff, get your mana base low enough. Like, there's a lot to take in when analyzing a strategy. And it's really disingenuous when someone's building a deck or showing a deck and you're like, hey, tell me your thoughts on my deck. And someone harps on one card choice that you made. And really makes you feel as though you are an idiot, per se. Like,
It's not the deck that has a problem, it's you that has a problem. It becomes personal.
yeah, and very much so. And it's really, like, I think gatekeeping in general, this topic, we're kind of discussing, like, new players, right? Like, what helps new players enter the format? What helps us grow the format? What helps us become more popular as a community? And when you look at things like that, like, that's a huge turnoff to new players. Nobody wants to be told that their ideas are stupid. Nobody wants to be told that they're an idiot. Nobody wants to be told that they don't know how to play well. And I think that something that you've ran into, Kian, I know in like certain deck-specific Discords, is people kind of shitting on your ideas or your discussion topics simply because you're asking a question. Yeah. And it's like, why are you even asking that question, you idiot? Don't you know the answer? And it's like, imagine being a new player and you're like, hey guys, I don't know why ad Naus is so good. Can someone tell me? And they're like, this
Read
is
the
a
card, idiot.
Yeah, this is you're a troll, dumbass.
Go back
like,
to Modern, figure it out yourself.
yeah, exactly. Like, that's a huge turnoff, and it's totally gatekeeping the format. Yeah. And the problem is that, like, there's not a lot of resources for new players to go to for that advice. Like, you go to a deck-specific Discord, like, I want to play this deck, I want to learn about it the best way I can.
And you get blasted.
And people are just shitting on you over and over and over again.
And it's not even that. Well, it is that, but like, you will ask a question, and people will just shit on you.
They'll meme the whole time. Like, dog cack, you're an idiot.
No. They won't even, they'll meme you, but they'll give you a non-answer. You'll ask a question, they'll be like, okay, I do this because this. They just gave a statement. They're not
helping you learn.
They're not helping me learn. And like, I have been playing this format for a while. So like having a person say, you should just learn how to play the deck better. It's like, I've been playing this archetype for six to 5 years. Like, I'm not new to this archetype, and you telling me like, oh, just learn the deck. Like, coming from a person that's been playing a while, now taking that in the mindset of a newer player just coming in and experiencing this toxicity when trying to learn and sit down and actually gather information is just kind of counterintuitive.
Like, you have the experience, you're like, oh, okay, I'm actually not an idiot, he's just kind of giving me some sass here.
Yeah.
And for a new player, they've been like, oh, shoot, maybe I am the idiot.
Yeah.
And
like,
it just
or,
comes
or,
across.
Or I'm not good enough to play because this guy called me an idiot.
Yeah.
So why would I want to play this format where everybody's a dick and everybody's a jerk?
Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate because there are like resources that new players can utilize and communities that are really beneficial, but the major, like, the first community that you're going to go to is the one that you're going to seek for advice. Like, if you want to play a specific deck, you're going to go to a deck specific Discord and ask about it. And people make you feel like you're dumb, for no reason. Or they'll be like, hey, I'm new to cEDH, why are we playing Force of Will? And they're going to say, oh, if you don't know, maybe you shouldn't play cEDH.
And I think it paints the community like
very toxically.
Very toxically.
It creates that stigma.
And I don't think it's a majority of like the actual player base. Because if you go like locally, you find like a play group, like there'll be a couple outliers, like, oh, this, like 1 or 2 people are toxic, but that's out of like 10 people.
But it's always the toxic ones that respond.
Yes.
That's the
they want to pick fights. Okay, they're not
That's
okay in the head. There's something's up with them. Yeah.
I mean, I will say that there was a time where I was on that fringe where I was building a new deck where I wanted to just get some advice on it. And I actually did nearly quit building the deck for you guys. It's Sithis that I nearly broke up because of the specific Discord that everyone was just toxic about the questions that I had on it. And there were like things, okay, well, I wanted to try this, and it was like, no, you have to do on this. And you guys have seen the things because of how I've done things on the deck, how unique it is on that aspect.
Well,
with certain cards.
And as in franchise players, I think we're guilty of it too.
Absolutely.
Like it's not like
yeah,
we're
we gatekeep
saints.
hard.
Yes,
Don't-
yeah.
We're
We're
not
not saints, and we don't like we're not like we're the perfect example of how you should conduct
'cause
yourself.
we're
Even
not.
in our own Discord, sometimes you fall into that trap of like someone's like, I want to try this, and it's like, well, this is I think just better, and it's like if you just say that and you leave it at that. Like, you're really invalidating that person's opinion.
Absolutely.
And we've learned over time that, like, okay, maybe it's like, hey, you want to do that. I suggest that you should do this instead. But explain to me why you think that that is a good strategy. And let's discuss it and talk about it. And maybe we both can learn something new.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of that myself.
I think explaining it, I think our group specifically does it well because we'll be like, "Hi, I just played Blue Farm," but
we know what's going on. We're making fun.
we're making fun. But like,
We're
if someone
poker
asks a serious question, like, "Why
We'll take
are
a
you
second.
playing these cards?" and be like, "Okay,
Here's
here's our explanation." Be like, "Okay, thanks for the advice." Because if you go to any other Discord, some random on the internet will be like, "No, just play this because this."
You have the audacity to ask this?
Yeah. Like,
Shame on you.
Bam!
No, so I think that's something to establish very clearly. Like nobody's perfect and everybody's going to make that mistake. And when you've been playing for a while, sometimes you're going to look at something and be like, I don't fucking get it.
Agree
Like I just don't know what I'm supposed to say here or do here. Yeah. And I think that, I think that the community though as a whole is improving. I think even like in certain Discords that we're in, we're getting better discussions out of it. We're getting better responses, and people are a little bit more easy to converse
They're more
with.
forgiving.
Yes, and I think that that's because like the community has been working really hard to try to combat that stigma because we want new players to come in. We're growing, so cEDH is probably, besides Pioneer, like the fastest growing format. If you want to call it a separate format, I know that that's a whole problem.
Other discussion.
Yeah, it's a whole other
Another
discussion.
for another day.
Like cEDH is growing super, super fast, and people are like, hey, there is a benefit to this Rule Zero. There is a benefit to sitting down, knowing the expectations, and playing the game. Mm-hmm. So you want to welcome new players, and you want to help everybody out. And it's really difficult to, I think, for a lot of people to explain their thoughts, especially in our community. Yeah. So I think that like there's a lot of growth to happen, but I think that it's getting there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does suck when you're trying to build a deck and you've got a card like in Baby Blue Farm. People crap on you all the time for like, why are you playing explosive engineered explosives and stuff like that? And it's like, I have a reason for it, dude. There's like there are reasonings, and it sucks that you have to explain yourself and people still don't want to listen to it.
Yeah. I will say that although it kind of sucks, all the crap I've had to kind of go through as I've built this deck has really helped me get my reasonings together. So when someone says, hey, why are you playing this card? I'm like, oh, I've already got my ideas together. Here you go. Here's the paragraph.
yeah. It's almost like a tough love kind of thing.
It is a tough love.
Like it's prepared you for the worst, and now you're ready for it. Yeah. But yeah, I think that we can do a lot as a community to help like new players feel more comfortable. And I think creating those like safe spaces and places like that, like we always say, like, hey, if you're new, come join our Discord, and we will totally talk to you about what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, we'll totally help you build your deck, and we'll totally have a conversation about it, and work on card choices together. And I think that that's something that a lot more people should be willing to do. So,
and I think Magic as a community as a whole has been trying to not produce, but like cultivate more like positivity in like Discords and like other platforms. So yeah,
just learning how to convey your ideas.
Your thoughts and opinions. I think that it's really hard to communicate over the internet, especially.
And I know a lot of people don't want to, just because they're like, here, let me just throw my thought out there. I don't have time for this. I want to go. And it's not productive.
No, not at all. I think that was a really good question to have, because that is a big gatekeeping issue, I think, that exists in the community.
Yeah, I don't know if we really stayed on topic, but I feel like we got a lot of good ideas out there.
So Kian, I think you know what time it is.
All right, hell yeah, baby. All right, today we are doing flavor text of the week, but we're doing it in a newer format, I guess you would say. But we're going to be doing a pack giveaway to the person that guesses the flavor text right. So no one will guess on this podcast what the flavor text is.
I'm saying
Finally.
yes.
Well, Spencer's not here, so you guys are pretty fucked anyways.
Yeah, this is true.
I think the best way to format this is that you're going to read the flavor text of the week, and because I run the YouTube, the first comment.
We run the YouTube.
I'm saying
Our YouTube.
I'm saying the freaking
Our YouTube.
Anyways,
communism.
The first.
You gonna let me do my segment?
I'm telling
gonna,
them how are you gonna determine who gets it?
This is what we're paying for, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm getting to it. All right, the people that comment in the YouTube videos that that view us on YouTube, the people that comment, we will review.
Wait, the people that comment?
Non-Sad Naus team, the people that comment. If you guess it right, we'll get a hold of you. The people on Apple Podcast or Spotify, you can join our Discord, which is in the YouTube link below, or just go to the YouTube video and comment there, and we'll get a hold of you. So, the flavor text of the week.
This should be good.
Your own fragility is your undoing. I am merely the one to expose it.
We're not allowed to say anything to this.
Nope.
Dang.
cEDH playable. That's the only hint y'all get. I think it's a fairly easy one. Kind of an OP card. Not gonna lie. Swinging it back to Adam.
I'm just thinking about this. Like, this is funny. Because, like, it's literally just like, who can Google the flavor text first?
No! They found out to use Google!
Literally,
It's
Hitting that
like-
sheet step.
it's literally go to Gatherer.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out a better way to do this in the future.
Hey, listen, this is something new. And then the winner gets a pack, I think, a pack. One of our Sad Naus team members said he wanted to do like a little giveaway, a little something. We don't know what the pack is going to be yet, but don't expect like a Portal 3 Kingdoms pack to just pop up.
Set some expectations.
So, leave a comment down below. First comment is who we're going to give the pack to. So, Mike, back on this topic of gatekeeping, I think you have another question that you'd like to bring up.
So let me ask you guys, is the DDB a form of gatekeeping preventing new ideas and new players from entering the formats?
Ooh, that's a spicy take.
So, the way I view the DDB, I brought this up before, it's a tool. I don't feel like the DDB itself is gatekeeping. I mean, you can consider it based on what decks they accept, but I feel like more than the database is limiting what decks get on their site, I feel like it's more used as a tool by actual players to gatekeep what decks they interact with. Like, say I bring something that's not on the database to a discussion like, hey, what do you think of this deck? I'll get crapped on a lot more than if I bring a tried and true database deck. I don't feel like it's so much the database, but it's a tool used by players to express their opinions and gatekeep you.
I think that's like a really good explanation of that. Yeah. I think that, I don't think that the database is inherently trying to gatekeep the format. I think that it's another one of those things where it happens subconsciously, right? Like, it's a systematic issue, because what they're doing is they're saying like, hey, we're trying to optimize lists to the best of our ability, and we're going through this whole systems of checks and balances to help people optimize those lists and really take this format to another level. But what other people use that as well, if it's not on the database, it's clearly not an optimized list.
Yeah.
And it's you hit it on the head right there, where it's like, basically people nowadays are saying, hey, you know what, it's not on database, it's not a cEDH deck, we don't want to see it. Or it's like one of those fringe decks that we don't want to even see, or they'll just shit right all over it. And like, it's not cEDH.
I think that what cEDH used to be, which kind of gets a little muddled nowadays, and I don't think it's wrong that it's muddled, but cEDH used to be, how can we break a specific
archetype
card? How can we break a specific card? How can we break this commander, and how can we make it as high powered as possible? It's competitively.
It used to be a lot more commander centric. With
Yeah.
partners, it's kind of gone away from
Who cares?
that. Which,
Yeah. Timna, okay, bet.
Well, I feel like that can still be a way to deck build. I think it's okay to say like, hey, I know this commander isn't the best strategy, but how can I break it? How can I take this commander as competitive as possible? And people will bring that to a table or to a discussion on Reddit or Discord and be like, I think I broke this commander. And they'll be like, yeah, well, it still sucks. So like, what did you really do?
I mean, that's kind of how I did it with Sithis at the end there where you guys remember where I was still fleshing it out back in the day. Where it was okay. Well, I'm still ironing things out, but it's very much a commander-centric deck.
But yeah, so back to like the DDB itself, I think that people use it as a gatekeeping tool.
Yeah, I think Bryce put it out perfectly.
Let me pat myself on the back.
Yeah, pat yourself on the back. Good job, Bryce. I have nothing more to say on this.
Well, I don't
So,
either.
I have stuff to say, but
I think that there's a bit of a discussion here because is the DDB, it's a very helpful resource. I love the DDB. I love what it does, and it really helps establish these are the commonly best played combos. These are the things that people are doing. This is what you should look to.
These are the more optimized lists.
Yeah, this is what you should look to and base things off of this. But people use it as a powerful tool. People will tell you I built a Tymna Thrasios and it does this. And then you'll be like, well, there's 6 other Tymna Thrasios decks. Why aren't you just doing one of these? Yeah. And why aren't you? And they use it as a tool to kind of not abuse, but really make you invalidate your opinions. And I don't think that that's what the goal of the database is, right? The goal of the database is to help new players establish these are starting points that I can work from and these are things that I can look up to. Whereas other people will use it as a way to be you fucking suck because the database is the Bible. And
People
you need to
will use it as a be-all, end-all.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We're it's not on the database, but the database is the be-all, end-all. It is literally the holy guide to cEDH from what people think.
Yeah,
and that's not necessarily the case.
I think I've iterated this opinion before, but I look at the database as the precons of cEDH.
Yeah, we've literally done 2 DDB episodes. Check them out.
We talk a lot about our thoughts on the database, and we've learned a lot too. I think
about the process.
Oh yeah, we've reached out to the managers, and it's a huge process, and they do a really good job of trying to make sure that they don't gatekeep specific ideas or opinions. They're very open to new ideas, very open to new strategies, and there's so many checks and balances on the way that determine how they analyze things. And I think that
they don't just immediately invalidate someone's opinion.
And I think that if
other people do,
if other Discords or other online personalities thought in that way and didn't just try to invalidate someone right away, but gave thoughtful reasoning and ideas, I think that you'd see a lot less arguments that exist on this type of topic.
I think also a mindset that people get locked into is, so you're bringing forward this new deck, right? Why isn't it already on the DDB? And instead of, why isn't it already there? If this was good, it would be on there. It's maybe this is the starting point for this new way of looking at it.
This new idea.
And you need to come at it with a fresh mind, not if it's good, it should be on the DDB, instead of if it's the way to flop it. I don't even know how to say it, but yeah, I lost my train of thought there.
No, that's a
little bit of derailing.
I think we covered this one enough.
Yeah.
I think that there's not an inherent problem with the DDB, but I think that people use it as a tool to gatekeep new players or new ideas, and it kind of suppresses those thoughts and opinions.
Yep.
Bryce, I think you have another form of gatekeeping in the meta.
Yes, sir. All right. So when discussing differences of opinion in card choice and play patterns, we all evaluate cards differently. This is just a fact. When does constructive criticism cross the line of becoming gatekeeping?
So, when does it go too far?
Yeah.
I think that there's one obvious answer, and it's when criticism becomes personal. Yeah, when you're not criticizing a person's deck choices or opinions, but you're criticizing them as a person.
Yeah.
So I think there's a difference between criticism and insulting, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a clear line there where now you're just insulting someone's intelligence, or you're insulting someone's ideas, or you're insulting someone's personality, and you've gone too far.
Yeah. Instead of saying, "Oh, your deck sucks," it's saying you suck.
Yeah.
And that's
a whole nother world of problems, and it is gatekeeping, right? You're telling someone that you're not in limiting their access, but you're controlling them, and you're telling them you can't make decisions for yourself because you're too stupid. So let me tell you how to make your own decisions.
Let me tell you why.
Yeah, exactly. And no one wants to play. No one wants to play with people like that. No one wants to enjoy this format. No one wants to have fun because it's not fun to get shit on all the time.
No. I mean, I mean, we crap on each other a lot. There's a certain amount of
Well, we're all friends here.
yeah.
If there's an understanding, like
But if it's just some random stranger, you just can't do that.
Yeah.
no, and I think people don't understand that. Like that's like such a big problem. It's like, listen, yeah, with your friends, you might be able to joke or say things that you can't say to other people, but so you shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like I think that like I watched a podcast recently. I listened to a podcast with Shivam. He runs the Casual Magic podcast, and he had a guest on who is very much in the progressive scene about like teaching people how to communicate with each other and teaching people how to like have conversations and where the problems in communications lie with Magic the Gathering. And something that they brought up was like, oh, you know, in a lot of play groups or a lot of friend groups, some people might use like misogynistic language around their friends, and it's okay because everybody has this understanding that you're joking, right? Like, okay, you're joking, everybody knows it's a joke, no one takes it seriously, and they know you don't actually have those opinions. Now, if we go play with random strangers and you use that same misogynistic language,
They'll be like, whoa, what the heck?
they're gonna be like, that's not okay. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Because they don't have that understanding.
Yeah, and I think like to tie it back into what we're talking about, you and your friends might shit on each other all the time. You might be like, you're a fucking idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. Just play this, blah 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 blah. Then you say that to a stranger over the internet. They have no fucking idea that you're joking.
Yeah.
And you might be like, oh, it's just a joke, dude. And it's like, that doesn't matter. It hurt my feelings. like I don't care that you're joking. You're a fucking dick, dude. Like, why would you do that? Yeah. So I think that like there is like a definitive line where it's like, dude, you're crossing a line. And I think to some people, they also can't take constructive criticism, which I think is also a problem.
I think it's also a fine line as well, because for some people, like you were saying, like they can't take people pointing out the mistakes, or not mistakes, but like the pointing out like some obvious choices, like what we brought up before, like maybe like cantrips or like something like, why are you playing cantrips instead of this? They're like, oh, because I like cantrips. It's like, but don't you want to play optimized cards? And they're like, no, I want to play my cantrips because I want to play them. And they can't take you saying, no, this is X is just better. Y is just better.
Not even just that, but like even in that example, if you're like, well, you know, cantrips are really good in 60 card formats, but they don't really, you know, in a 100 card singleton, a cantrip only has so much power. You don't have a 4 of it. You can't recur it. You can't, you know, optimize it with a fetch land and break that barrier. And someone's like, why are you talking to me like I'm stupid? Why are you talking to me like I don't, like they can't take, like when you're trying to be beneficial and help and talk, you're really organizing your thoughts in a professional way and saying like, hey, I'm just trying to help you. Some people can't take that, and like and I think that that's a problem too, because people don't, like, if you're asking for advice, you need to be willing to accept it as well. And I think like we run into that problem sometimes with us, where it's like we try to be very well thought out when we explain things, and we try to like help people, and we try to be beneficial to the community. And some people are just like, I don't care about your opinion, I was just asking a rhetorical question. And it's like, okay, we're online.
In the Discord.
We're online. Like that question isn't rhetorical when you put it out there. So it's very funny to like think about it, because I think that there's like there's a social barrier to Commander as well. Yeah. And I think that it is a fine line, and you're tiptoeing that line constantly, because you're working with individuals where you don't know what sets them off, what is going too far, and it's really hard to communicate that, and you have to pick up on a lot of social cues, and that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, you don't know the mentality and the where they are in their head at that point in time, where something so small can trigger them. And that's where it goes back to what you were saying, Keen, where it's a very fine line. There is no shade of gray in it. And that's the weird thing, where maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, there would have been a little bit of shade of gray. Nowadays, it's a very fine line.
I remember I was in a Discord the other day, and somebody asked a question, and someone responded with, "Shut the fuck up." And then the guy was like, yo, what the hell? And the guy was like, I was just joking, bro. Don't take it so seriously. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, how are you supposed to determine that? You just told the guy to shut the fuck up. Like, he asked, like, he wrote like a paragraph, thought up like this well thought out question, and was like, does anybody have any input? And the guy was like, shut the fuck up. And I was like, oh my God. Like,
that escalated.
Yeah, like
that escalated fast.
Yeah, and I was just like,
just a prank, bro. Just a prank. I was joking around.
Yeah, and
it's
like you can't do that
because there's no mannerisms.
It is impossible to be able to determine if someone's joking around or serious.
Sarcasm doesn't exist on the internet.
Exactly.
So yeah,
unless you know the person.
Constructive criticism is very much a touchy subject.
It's a tightrope.
You don't really know you don't know when you're going to cross that line because it's different for everybody. But I think there's a way to conduct yourself where even if you do cross that line to somebody else,
You covered your bases.
you're not in the wrong because you were being respectful, you were being responsible, and you're doing the best that you can. And I think that more people should think that way when it comes to analyzing other people's choices or decisions or ideas. Like, don't just shoot it down right away. Ask the question. And I've seen it. I've seen it in Discords where someone's like, "Why? Can you tell me why you're doing this?" And someone will be like, will comment below like, "Oh, it doesn't matter why he's doing it. It sucks." And like, I've seen that guy comment back and be like, "No, I want to hear his ideas. Like, don't shoot it down." And it's cool to see that in the community. Like, yes, like let's explore ideas, and then we can all learn from each other and pick up on those ideas and build better decks. And I think that should be the goal.
Yeah, I think in our little play group and the community that we're trying to cultivate, we want that as well, is where we're trying to be able to allow people to learn things and thrive without having that stigma that we're talking about here, where it's like, hey, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear what you have as a question.
If it doesn't exist, it must not be good enough. So shut your fucking mouth.
Exactly. I mean, we want to be able to cultivate and be able to teach people what we know and what we believe may be the best lines, but we also want to hear feedback from them as to what they have.
And just learn. Just be open to learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not the end-all, be-all of this game.
No.
We want to learn as well.
We're not.
Yeah.
We ain't
We're
nothing.
not all perfect.
We ain't nothing but
Exactly.
8 dudes from Wisco trying to jam some games and drink some beer.
I mean, in my case, it's vodka, but whatever.
So on that aspect of like constructive, do you have anything else you'd like to
Yeah,
add to that?
I have one more thing. So I think because I know we're talking about like, oh, how can we not just crap on people? And I think the best way to go about that is to give good constructive criticism. Like, instead of just saying, oh yeah, that card's not good, you need to add more to that. Otherwise, it's not good. And I think the best ways to do that are to explain why and to provide an alternative.
Yeah.
Because if you're just saying, oh yeah,
Alternatives
this
are a
card
must.
sucks, it's like, okay, what's a better
What card do you
alternative that's going to
recommend?
do what this card does?
Yeah, I want this effect. What if this is so bad? What's something that does this instead?
So, like the Gnome that we were talking about before, what other card is going to ramp you as much as that can at a 2-drop slot?
I
And if you're
understand.
trying to do that,
Hawk.
and that's the only option you have,
Squadron
saying
Hawk.
it's
I would.
not.
The Gnome is way better than Squadron Hawk.
Oh, by far, but for a 2-mana slot,
Well, like,
saying.
what I would look at, like, say someone said that, like, the Gnome,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be playing, or if someone said, I want to play the Gnome, and I don't think the Gnome fits well in their deck, well, what I suggest is, well, you can get a similar effect to that maybe doesn't ramp you, but draws you cards. So,
Yeah,
like, in that,
Archivist.
I would think the Archivist is a better slot than the Gnome, because it's giving you card advantage and the possibility of ramp, because you might just draw into those lands.
Yeah.
And it has more effects than the Deep Known Taromancer.
I think adding that is what is going to put your criticism way past the point where it's not going to be even close to just, oh yeah, that sucks. It's not gatekeeping. It's just like, hey, this is all the info that I have to share.
It is helping, right?
Yes.
it's not attacking the person. It's just giving them that constructive criticism at that point and not going beyond that boundary.
As long as you keep it constructive, I think you'll stay clear of just straight up gatekeeping.
Yeah, and I think that'll help you to better build relationships with people and better build ideas with other people and gain a little bit of notoriety as being someone who's positive. And then you know what? Then you can meme on people and be friendly with them and joke around because they know who you are and they validate your opinions and they really take them with what am I trying to say? They don't take them with a grain of salt. They actually think about them and appreciate them.
Yeah.
And then it's funny to be like, okay, you should just play Blue Farm, and then be like, no, but seriously, this is what I think.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it has
Like,
a big benefit.
yesterday, I was in the Discord, right? There was a card you played on me Friday, right? That just shut me out of the water. And I went in the Discord and I said, bad, stinky, poo-poo, icky card.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, it's actually not that bad. And Adam comes in, he's like, yeah, he just got a fat L to that.
Yeah,
So
it was-
that context means so much more.
Yeah, like it helps to have that kind of relationship built in, that communication where people can talk and discuss. And I think that we're trying to build that environment in our like Discord. I know that people like in Josh's Discord for Mind Muscle Magic, they build that positive environment. The founders Discord is really so. There are places that you can find that information. I just wish that the community would more widely accept that, like, this is what we should strive for. This is what we should aim for. So it's something to think about and to look at. Speaking of that,
Speaking of the community subject, I'd like to bring up, I know this is actually a question from one of our Patreons, because we did ask for this episode, like, what are your guys' thoughts on this?
Great inputs, by the way.
Great inputs, by the way. So this is kind of generalized, and then I'll add an additional caveat to this. So are content creators responsible for the look of cEDH as a whole? Because this is more of like a community-driven format, and content creators in any community, like you can look at anything in the world, like YouTube, yada yada yada. Content creators have the most impact in those communities. Now the caveat that I'm going to add is, are they responsible for the look that they're giving to cEDH?
Ooh.
I think
Responsible, that's hard to address. I think we should start off, are they the face? Which I think they 100% are.
Yeah.
There's two people that are going to be the driving force of this format, in my opinion. The people that win tournaments and the people that talk about them, right? The people that win aren't as easily accessible as the people that talk about them. So that's why I think they're the face.
I wouldn't even add the first part. I'd add the latter, because they have the most popularity, and they have the voice in the community. So they'll be able to instill ideas to players that the people that win the cEDH tournament can't reach. And that's kind of bringing it back to my caveat. Are they responsible for breeding that positivity or that negativity that we tend to see in these Discord communities, like in cEDH?
So responsible means that there's consequences.
Yes.
And they're just people, in my opinion, right? This is entirely my opinion, but at a certain point, they're human beings. I'm not going to hold them responsible if they crap on a card that I don't agree with. Sure, they carry more weight, but I don't know if they should be punished for that.
no. Okay, so I think when I analyze,
Because that's what a responsibility is.
Well,
But
when I analyze this question, I'm thinking of it of are they responsible to upholding an opinion that impacts the community positively?
Yeah, not
So-
more card choices, more community.
Yeah, so what I'm saying with that is if you have a content creator who's you shouldn't build a deck that's not on the database. You should only be building database decks. You should only be playing optimized lists that have proven to be optimized, blah, 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 blah. And anything outside of that is just purely bad. That voice is going to resonate to their listeners, and now those listeners are going to garnish that opinion. And now they're going to hold that opinion as well. And now that's how that toxicity spreads throughout the community. Because they're well, comedian said, blah, 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 blah. That's just an example. Comedian doesn't say this type of stuff. But say
Never heard him say blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, no, but if you know what I mean? If they said Playing with Power said that you shouldn't do anything besides this. Now, they have the hugest voice in the community. Now all these people are going to listen to that, and they're going to be oh, this is what the opinion should be because this so-and-so said so. And I think that they're 100% responsible for their opinions, and they're 100% responsible for trying to try to impact the community in a positive way. I think that we've made it apparent that we try to breed a lot of positivity, and we try to push out a lot of negativity, but we're not afraid to talk about the negativity, right? I think that we're taking on that responsibility as quote unquote content creators.
Yeah.
Because it's what we can do to help the community in the little way that we can. And I think that other content creators should do the same thing. And I think that does exist. I think you look at Play to Win, Playing with Power, they're very positive. They're very proxy friendly, or they're very they don't want to build barriers to the format and stuff like that. But there are content creators out there that are kind of gatekeepy, and they're kind of this is the niche community that it should be. It shouldn't expand to that. If you don't want to play like this, you shouldn't play at all, and yada yada yada. And I think that can become an issue because like you said, they have the loudest voices. Everybody's gonna listen to them. You know what I mean? If PewDiePie woke up tomorrow and was this fucking shit sucks, everybody would be yeah, it fucking sucks.
True.
I will agree with you as far as if the content creators are responsible, because they absolutely are to some extent, but you also have to take into consideration that a lot of content creators are also coming from other formats. A lot of that toxicity could also be coming from other formats as well. That might not be taken into consideration here. that a lot of these other formats are in fact toxic as well, and that is bleeding into our format.
I don't
here.
think that's
I don't
an
think-
excuse for them though.
Yeah,
Oh no, it's not
I
an
don't
excuse
think that
by
should
far.
I think that like
I'm not trying to go off and give them an excuse for their actions or what they're saying as, hey, this is a bad card, or this is what the meta is. Work off of just this. If this is not in the meta, then don't play it and shit all over it, because that's not what I'm trying to get at here.
I think something like specifically that we can attest to is like we've seen recently that like certain content creators that come from other formats, specifically like certain 60 card formats, are sometimes the most toxic people.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they have like sometimes they're very egotistical and they have this opinion that exists of like, oh, well, I've been through it, you know. I know what I'm saying. And so I'm not going to take your opinion into consideration. So I'm not even going to bother. I'm going to just tell you that you're wrong and move on.
And that's
it's
just
like,
giving fuel to what I'm saying.
yeah, which I think is a big problem, but I think they're responsible for that. Like I think
absolutely
that
are.
you need to understand that, like, hey, like people value your opinions, but don't be a dick about it.
Don't overstep the
Yep.
the boundary.
Yeah, and I
Exactly.
think that that's like a huge thing. Bryce, you seem like you got something you want to say.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so obviously they carry weight. Their opinions carry a lot of weight. I don't think responsible is the right way of looking at it. Like, if I think genuinely that, you know what, if you want to go to a tournament and you don't want to play, if you want to play something that's not in the DDB, maybe you should rethink what your deck is. That's not my opinion, but say that was, right? If I say that and I get blasted for that, is that not gatekeeping me on what I can think because I'm a content creator?
What do you mean? Like, because you put that opinion out there, so now people are going to hold you to that opinion?
No, like if you're trying to enforce that you have to be super welcoming and open to everyone because you're a content creator, why would I want to be a content creator if that's not my opinion?
I think that you have to have, I think that that's the responsibility you take on as a content creator. Is like you have to be welcoming to new people, you have to be understanding, and you're going to deal with things that maybe aren't like 100% things that you agree with. Like you're going to deal with people that are going to bring you suboptimal card choices, and you're going to have to explain your thought process and do that. But I think it's your responsibility as a content creator to do that in a way that isn't confrontational, right? So like at what point does constructive criticism cross the line of gatekeeping? I don't think just because you're a content creator, you can cross that line. You know what I mean? And so on and so forth. And I think that if you do cross that line, all of a sudden other people are going to look at that and say, well, that's okay to do because so-and-so did so. And now I'm going to do that when I communicate with other people because that's how this person communicates.
I think whenever a person has a platform that they can speak on, they're held not, I guess you would say like a higher standard, because people are going to listen to you and they're going to either respect your opinion or not respect your opinion. And I think you having like either positive effect on that or a negative effect on that greatly dictates what your listeners do or how they act and how they interact with other people. So say like, like Adam brought up playing with power. Say like they say that this deck is really bad, yada yada yada. They don't like it's really negative, and then all their listeners are gonna go on other discourse and just roast everybody that's on that deck and say your deck is fucking trash. Playing with power says it's bad. Blah blah blah. Is playing with power held responsible because they said that deck was bad, or are the actual people that listen to playing with power and are absorbing their content held responsible?
I think it's why like when we do our content and we do like our database episodes, we might say like we don't really understand this deck, or we don't like think that this deck is the most optimized or the best strategy that you can be doing, but we still want to see it in practice, and we still want to see what it does first before we formulate a full opinion. Because you have to put that disclaimer out there that like, hey, I might already have this preconceived notion and this might be my opinion and I'm entitled to it, but that shouldn't be your opinion because I don't know everything, right? We don't know everything. And I think that like, unfortunately, even though it shouldn't be the case, like content creators do influence the format, and it's a hive mind, and a lot of time it's the ideas that they portray that everybody else is going to believe.
Listen to. Yeah.
And I think that sometimes unintentionally content creators can gatekeep cEDH. Like, they can say, like, oh, you should only be playing this kind of stuff, or only these types of people should be playing the format, or so on and so forth. And I think that that's why people appreciate channels like Play to Win and Playing with Power that are very welcoming to new ideas. Playing with Power has decks on every month that I've never even heard of. I'm like, who the fuck is that commander? And they don't josh it or hate on it or, you know, whatever. They like, let's see how it does. Like, play the deck. Let the deck do the talking. And I think that that's why people appreciate that type of content. And I think that, you know, they definitely have an impact on that whole gatekeeping stigma that cEDH kind of carries with it.
Okay. I do agree somewhat then. I will say that I believe that it's the people that listen to him, if they want to go and express those same opinions, ultimately it's them being the problem, not so much the people they listen to. But yes, I guess there is a responsibility that as a content creator, you are influencing people, and you need to take that into consideration with what you say.
Yeah, I think that that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
Is like
you're on a platform, you're held to a higher standard.
Yeah, and think about that when you talk. You know,
And it's literally you're on a platform. Like when you think of platform,
literal
a literal
platform.
platform below the plebs looking down. And you're like, all right,
thing is-
peasants.
Like, the thing is, the more people that you have, the higher the standard you're set to.
Yes.
That's
the
what
more your
people need
opinion
to
is going to matter, and the more
absolutely.
that people are going to take
And
that into account.
people take that for granted, is that, you know, if you have like 50,000 people following you, you are set to like a very, very high standard compared to someone that only has like 5,000. Where it's like, yeah, you're influencing a very small group of people, but compared to that 50,000, you're just a fish in a large pond.
Yeah, small fish in a big pond.
Yeah.
So, in the topic of gatekeeping, right,
Yep.
Bryce, I think you got quite the loaded question here.
All right, this one's really loaded, almost as loaded as Kian's was. All right, so in what instances, if any, is gatekeeping acceptable? Right. So, Adam, do you think it's acceptable, and when?
I think that you really have to look at like how you define gatekeeping, right? And I think that like we kind of talked about, like, there's a difference, right? You have constructive criticism and you have gatekeeping, right? At what point is gatekeeping acceptable? I don't think that you should ever gatekeep the format, right? I don't think you should ever try to limit someone's accessibility to cEDH. I don't think you should ever try to control someone's ideas or thoughts when it comes to cEDH. I think that you should do your best and work your hardest to try to help people and try to convey your ideas in the best way possible. So, I don't know, there's a lot that can kind of go into that question, right?
Mike, what's your thoughts on this?
You know, there's never, in my view, a point where it's
Acceptable?
allowable, but you also have that point where, you know, there are people that, if you have a history with them, then you can say, hey, you know, you've been in, hypothetically here, and this is the best way that I can put it.
Yeah.
If you've had someone that you've had in a cEDH pod with you before, and maybe this is, let's say, 6 months to a year ago, and things didn't quite work with them, they ended up dropping cEDH, and they want to come back to cEDH, and they may not have that mindset.
I think something that you said there was really important. And I think what it was when you're with your friends, you can kind of gatekeep.
Absolutely.
I think that like when we're together and someone's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about building this deck," and you're like, "What? Like what?"
Excuse me?
Yeah, like what is that gonna like when you've built up a repertoire with your friends and you have that like that genuinely niche community of like a core group of people that you talk to on a daily basis, you can kind of gatekeep your friends. You can kind of be like, dude, like that's not like, come on, bro, you know that's not good. Like, why are you wasting your time?
I remember
with
when
that?
Bryce first suggested building Baby Blue Farm. All right, and I was like, this deck is gonna fucking suck. Why are you building this deck? And then he explained reasonings, but like you like on your point before, when you're with your friends, it's a whole like it's one thing, but when you're online and you're like interacting with other people in the community, it's a whole different thing. And I think you have to take that into account when you talk with people.
I think that there is too a time where it's okay to tell someone that maybe something isn't cEDH.
Oh, for sure.
I think that that's acceptable as well. I think that when you think about like certain decks or certain ideas that someone's like, oh, I'm gonna try to take this to the next level. I think it's like it's fair to say to someone like, okay, hear me out, man.
Yep.
I think you can like go ahead and push this as far as you can push it. But from my experience, I'm letting you know now that I don't think you'll get this quite to the highest standard.
Yeah.
You know, like technically any combination of colors can get you there, right? Any monocolored deck, any combination of colors, anything can get you there, right?
Yeah.
But I think that when it comes to building something that's really powerful, it's fair to say like, hey, I don't know if that's going to cross that boundary.
So this is something I actually want to bring up in particular to this question. I'm going to get shot for this, right? Because eventually this deck's going to come and mop my cheeks. But as an example, right, we're going to bring up Tago, which is landfall whenever a land enters, make a rock, right, which is equip, yada yada. We don't really care, right?
Do 1 damage,
Kodama, which is whenever a permanent enters, you can put another permanent from your hand of equal or lesser CMC. And Storm Cauldron, which is whenever you tap a land, return it to your hand. You can play an additional land per turn. With those three out, you can loop you
can make infinite rocks,
land and the rocks,
and
which
then
is
kill
just
your
responding
opponents.
to the ETB.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, right? I don't think the deck is that good. I don't think it's going to make any cEDH things whatsoever, but it is a combo, right? And you could say, hey, I want to take this to the next level. There isn't that much support for it, but I want to do it. At what point do you say, okay, I'm not trying to gatekeep, but I don't think this can get here? Like, how do you genuinely criticize someone saying this deck sucks?
I think that you have to look at it like maybe you're not criticizing them, right? Like you can say like something that I try to do is like wow, that looks really fun and really cool. The problem is that it can't perform well under these standards. Yep. Or when you're versing someone like this that's playing this type of archetype or this type of archetype, how are you going to hold up to that? And you kind of explain, you go down that ladder of like
what are you bringing to the table that you can't get somewhere else.
And when you're put in these specific situations, what does this deck do that another deck can't? Or what does this deck do that makes it better, right?
Yeah.
And I think that like that comes into like the whole topic of like optimization, because I think there are certain decks that are completely optimized for this like the current meta, and then certain decks that kind of are meta busters, right? Like when you look at a deck like Magda, right? And like something that can slip under that radar, kind of bust the meta, play through certain stacks, pieces and stuff like that, which are decks that you never suspect. So I never want to shoot down someone's idea. It's always like, hey, if you want to build Tago, Kodama, Storm Cauldron, go ahead and do it, because you might be the meta buster and I just might not be able to see it.
Yeah.
But I'm letting you know now that I don't think it can get there. But do your best and prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Like always say
I would
that.
love to get mobbed by a Kodama
Tago deck.
That'd be the goofiest thing.
You know, I've seen the deck. It's funny. It's a lot of fun to play against. Will it be a competitive thing? I'm going to get shot for this also. I don't think that it
Welcome
can
to
get
the
there.
sinking ship, my guy.
We'll get there.
I think it's just a way that you communicate, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that it's like I don't
Knock rule, then die.
No, I think
If you're not Rurik Thor, then die.
I don't think that it's gatekeeping, right? I don't think that it's gatekeeping. I think that it's trying to give someone feedback in an acceptable way. Because I think once you hit gatekeeping, it's when you cross that line we discussed earlier. So I think that we just need to work better at communicating as a community your thoughts and ideas and take that into consideration when you're talking to people.
I think gatekeeping is almost 100% just a communication problem.
Absolutely.
100%, especially in Magic.
Yes,
you know,
for sure.
I mean, there are systematic things, right? We talked about financial gatekeeping and things like that. Like there are things that
Can hold you back.
But I think that the main problem in the community is just communication.
I mean, and as Adam said, you know, when as far as to bring back to your question, there are certain times where it may be acceptable, like with friends, like you were talking about, Adam, where you know you can theoretically say, hey, you know, maybe this isn't what you want to do. Kean, you were talking about when Bryce wanted to build Baby Blue Farm at the start. You were like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I mean,
What are those?
What are those?
There are certain times where you can. there are certain times where you can say, and I know I'm being completely hypocritical at this point because I said that you can't. But there are times where, yeah, you absolutely can with your play group. And you know these people that, yeah, you can absolutely say,
You can say that.
This is not something that I would do, or this is probably not going to make it for our meta, where it's not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
So, on that topic, right, my question to kind of round out this main topic is, how do you think that we as the community, right, not just us, but as a community whole, cEDH in general, how can we fix the problem of gatekeeping that exists? Because I think it is a problem. We see it all the time. You see it in Discords. You see it on Reddit. Reddit especially. Oh my God, Reddit is such a cesspool of thoughts and ideas. And then, like, even at LGSs, you can see it too, or at tournaments and all this stuff. Like, how do you fix this problem of, like, the community kind of controlling thoughts and ideas and limiting, like, people's opinions of what they should play and what they can't, and if new players should enter the format and things like that?
You know, I'll be the generic one that says everyone just needs to have an open mind and positive concepts about things.
Shut the fuck up, you hippie.
I mean, you know, I feel that a lot of this
was a
comes
great
down to
episode.
communication, where if you have a negative output on it and you shit all over something, then people are gonna not want to play it, and that it comes back down to the stigma at that point, where people want to believe that we are biased pricks that want to just play the best things and give no fucks about what everyone else thinks.
Don't validate that opinion, right? People want to come. People believe that cEDH is this specific idea, right? This ideology and this idea of, like, pub stomping and, like, mean play patterns and all this kind of stuff. Don't be the guy that validates that opinion. Don't be the one that makes them say, yeah, see, I knew cEDH was bad. You know, you don't want to be that person, because that's what stops people. That's what stops it from growing.
Promote being a good person to everyone. That's what it is.
I think Magic is it's mentally stimulating. It's attractive to a lot of people, especially people that don't fit into a lot of groups. And a lot of those people, because just the way things are, haven't built up their communication skills. And I think Magic is the perfect place to do that. I saw a statistic once that people who play Magic and play it for a long time are more successful with their jobs. They're better at opening businesses. They're just generally more successful in their life. I think Magic is a great breeding ground to improve your communication. And because of that, you're just going to see a lot of communication mishaps and errors and all this gatekeeping nonsense. And I think as a community, we have to accept that it's going to exist, but at the same time, push for people to correct, learn, and grow, and become better at voicing their opinions, communicating their thoughts, and not being a long schlong.
Yeah. I think a big proponent is, I think that one way to fix the problem is to call people out.
Yes.
Like, don't be afraid to call someone out that's gatekeeping someone. Don't be afraid to say, hey, man, that's not cool. Don't talk to him that way.
Because I know if you address something like, hey, guys, that wasn't cool, they'll know. If you don't say anything, they're like, oh, okay, let's do this next time.
Yeah, like if no one ever gets reprimanded, they're going to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it until someone tells them that it's wrong. And then if it's too late, they're going to be like, well, I did it for years and no one ever said it was a bad thing, and now you're telling me it's bad. You know, like, you should not be afraid to say, hey, man, we don't accept that type of language here. We don't accept that type of communication, and you need to be a better person, because otherwise no one wants to play or be around you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's totally fine to do. And I know we've had to do it before with even each other in our play group.
Yep.
Like, say, like, hey, dude, not cool. Or, hey, man, take a step back. Or whatever you got to do, right? So to let someone know that, like, maybe you're going too far or overstepping certain boundaries. And I think that that's, like, the easiest way for us to kind of fix that problem. And to just be accepting, you know? Like, understand other people's situations and where they might come from. Especially when it comes to things like the financial burden and proxying and things like that. Understand, like, some people can't afford these cards, you know, but they want to play and they want to have fun, you know? So, like, why be the person to tell them that they can't? I think that you have to analyze everything from a different perspective to really have a positive impact on the community as a whole. And I think that we're headed in that direction. I think it's a slow process. I think that our format is going to eventually do it better than any other, simply because you have to communicate in EDH.
Yes.
You're sitting at a table.
Communication is half of the game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I think that it's getting better and we're making progress, but there's still a ton of room for growth. And I think that
there's always room for growth.
Yeah.
Which is what's good.
And it's not always going to be perfect, but you can breed positivity and make things better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think to recap and to put plainly, how do we fix this this community problem, gatekeeping? I think there's 3 easy steps. I think there's 1, we need to have great communication skills, or not great, but we need to get better at, I know Mike said it.
Practice them.
We need to practice them, and we need to, damn it, Bryce, you got me off topic.
I'm sorry.
We should be open-minded about things.
Yeah, we need to be more open-minded, and we need to be more understanding of where the other person's coming from. Like, I know, like, the classic, you got to take a trip in another man's shoes. I think that applies, like, especially on the internet. You don't have to take into consideration what they, like, what are they going through, yada, 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 because then you'll be too over-analytical and overthink something and then not say what you really wanted to say because you thought that you would offend. I think you need to take, like, a little step back, say, okay, maybe they're coming from this idea, but you still need to communicate. You need to have, like, great explanations, blah, blah. That's step 1. And step 2, I guess you would say. All you guys went before me and said a lot of shit, so I don't really know what to say here.
You just lost your train of thought.
Yeah, I just lost. I'm like, well, Adam said
Rip.
that shit. Fuck. Bryce said it. Fuck. Mike said it. Fuck.
Sorry for gatekeeping your.
Dude, you're gatekeeping my explanations. Okay, man, I'm in the corner by myself. You just feed me magic cards.
Hey, man, tell you what, I'll build a fence for you just so that we can keep your gate cap.
Hey, Mark.
Alright, so to take away more of your thunder, right? I got some more. I'd like
Oh, shit.
So I know we keep on saying, like, oh, you need these skills, you need this. That's not to say that you need those in order to participate.
Yeah.
You need to kind of...
We're not gatekeeping your ideas,
Yeah,
but...
you need to kind of build at them. You need to go, okay, I know this is where I need to be, but this is where I am. So how can I get there? And I think the important things are expressing your thoughts. Like, whatever you got in your head, you got to let that sucker out. I think restating each other's thoughts is also important. Like, if I'm saying something, right, and you're like, okay, let me repeat this back to you, and if I'm not saying it correctly, obviously there's a communication barrier, and, like, until I get what you're saying correct, then I can actually state my opinion.
All I'm here,
Yeah, how do I communicate with this?
I think one of the biggest things that you can do to, like, impact yourself and how, like, what communication skills that you might be lacking or things like that is to analyze your own conversations and be like, man, the other day I had a conversation with someone that just went south. Let me go reread what I typed and what they typed and see where I was wrong or what happened, where maybe I can see that, oh, I was the issue, not just them.
Yeah. Or talk with other people, because they may have like a different viewpoint. Like, hey, am I wrong in this conversation or am I right? And they'll be like, you were wrong because of this. Like, oh, okay, now I can learn from
Or maybe
this.
you're not inherently wrong, but you could have done this better, or you could have communicated,
phrased it better.
Yeah, you could have said it this way, and it would have avoided that confrontation.
I know I'm a big component because I don't really put. I'm not good at articulating stuff correctly, but like after like maybe like a day, I'll come back and say like, okay, these are my thoughts laid out. But then it's like too late, and it's like, I don't want to talk.
Yeah. You don't want to feel like it's like you've missed the mark, and then try to reiterate your thoughts. And the guy's like, dude, that was last week. I don't even care anymore.
We're done, all right?
Yeah. It's like, but I think about this every day.
Yeah.
I'm up in the tree and I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, I'm very bad about that.
I think the takeaway from this episode, I know it was a lot and a lot of maybe tangents that it was hard to keep track of, but if you're going to take anything away from this episode, I think it's that we acknowledge that gatekeeping exists in cEDH. It's a problem and it's getting better, but there's a lot of room for growth.
Yeah.
If we worked on our communication skills as a community, we learn to talk to each other better, we learn to analyze each other's ideas and thoughts and opinions and validate them when they're right, and think thoroughly before we criticize them, that a lot of these problems wouldn't be problems. I think that if we consider that people come from different backgrounds, have different financial responsibilities, and we don't criticize someone for not being able to afford something or not be able to play the game a certain way, and we tell people to play with what you can and, invite that type of community mentality, that would fix a lot of problems as well. And then finally, just think about how you would want to be spoken to.
Yeah.
And think about how you would want to be communicated with, and show that respect to the people that you're talking to. And a lot of these problems would solve themselves.
And just remember, respect is earned, not given.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you put it pretty well, Adam.
Yeah, I agree with all those points.
Yeah,
I think that's
so do I.
well.
I
Cool.
think we can leave it there. Now, to be totally hypocritical
And gatekeep each
we
other.
are gatekeeping each other. Bringing on to newest segment, feeding the fish. Bryce, we're gonna start with you because I know I can roast you the hardest. I'm gonna build a bonfire, okay, of all your shitty ideas and whatnot. All right, Bryce and Mike, you two are both. Well, Bryce is not new, but Mike, you're new to this podcast. We have started a segment recently called Feeding the Fish. Basically, the general outline is you will be given 2 minutes to suggest a card that you think is either niche or underplayed, and you will give your reasoning towards that card. And us, the other 3 people, will be given 3 minutes to shit on you and tell you why you're wrong. Okay.
Deal, I'll start.
Deal. You want to start?
Let's go.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
Wait.
All right.
Wait.
3, 2, 1, go.
So I'd like to say that Suppression Field is actually the one that I'd like to get on. So this card not only hits fetch lands, but it hits a lot of other niche cards that you can go off of. I mean, you're talking that there's... There were a few things I was thinking of. But now I lost my train of thought.
You got 2 minutes.
Well, you got
gotta
2 minutes.
figure
You're
it
at
out.
20 seconds. Let's go.
Fuck it, go.
Well,
Shit on me.
here. No,
That's
suppression.
it.
So for those
Suppression
for
field.
those of you who don't know, it is a 1 and a white enchantment.
Correct.
Activated abilities of any permanent that are not mana abilities cost 2
Unthinkable.
colorless more or generic to activate. I guess I'll start since I'm talking. Mike, I think you're wrong. And this is not niche whatsoever. I think Suppression Field is a staple in most white-based stack strategies. At least two or monocolor. I know Adam. We've all seen the power of Suppression Field, whether it be Adam playing Infinity on High or just in general like big like Monarch tournaments and whatnot. I don't think it's very niche or underplayed. That's my viewpoint going.
I'm kind of on Mike's side here, so I will give my opinion next. I think
I don't
that
care.
no, I think that Suppression Field is underplayed because I think that a lot more low color strategies could run this deck without any without it hampering their own game plan. Yeah, I think that it's a huge stacks piece that a lot of people don't take into consideration because it stops things like it makes Thrasios activations cost more. If they have a Training Grounds in play, guess what? It's normal Thrasios now.
No!
It stops Planeswalkers activated abilities. It stops fetch lands. It does a lot to to any activated ability. It's a
Makes that
hoser.
mana vault called
And I
cost
only
6.
see this get played in stack specific decks where this almost to me is like just as playable as an Aven Mind Sensor. It's just as good as a card that you can throw into any deck that it doesn't hamper the game plan. If you're playing a strategy that doesn't abuse activated abilities, say you're only abusing, say like a Kodama deck, right? That's abusing triggered abilities. Like something like that can be really, really beneficial in a deck like that. And I think it is underplayed. I only see it really, I see it played in Sithis and I see it played in mono white strategies, and that's it, strictly. So I think that it could be seen in a lot more archetypes, and I think it could be, more of a staple than it is in the format. I think that for a lot of people, when it was played at Marchesa, it was like the first time people saw Suppression Field. They're like, what the fuck is that card? That's crazy, and I don't know, it's pretty cool.
ISO Scepter costs 4.
Yeah.
Bryce, you got it? You want to shit on Suppression Field?
Okay.
Hear it.
So, the primary problem with stacks is that the more power you wield, the more power you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot with. What I mean by that is when you build stacks, right, you have to take all your pieces into consideration. Like, okay, I have to play around these. Like, if I run into them, I don't want to shut myself off. So, inherent with stacks, there's a huge deck building disadvantage because you're basically playing at a lower level until these stacks pieces come out. Once they're out, you're playing at a higher level because your cards are built to play around them. So, with Suppression Field, it's a very strong card. Don't get me wrong. It shuts off so much crap, but what it means is you have to play so much less stuff.
It's deck specific.
You're playing so much lower than what you can be because there's so much value inherent with activated abilities that I feel like unless you're in monocolored, and monocolored being white, I don't think it should see play in quite a few decks. I think it's good, but I feel like it's too self-damaging in most situations. Like, it's very, very niche, even though it's amazing.
Cool. All right. Now, Bryce, it's your turn to say your underplayed, underappreciated card. 2 minutes on the clock now.
Okay, Standstill, right? So this is 1 in a blue enchantment, right? Whenever a player casts a spell, sacrifice Standstill, everybody but that player draws 3 cards. So what this is good at is that it closes the gap between turbo and mid-range decks. So if you play this out, this is rule law on steroids. Nobody wants to play at a 9-card disadvantage to their opponents. Turbo decks, their only advantage is speed. If you take that away from them, they are at an inherent disadvantage just on a deck building basis. If they play into this, they have to play at that 9-card disadvantage. There's almost a no-win situation for them. Obviously, it's a gamble more than gamble. It can shoot you in the foot where you need to still play spells and no one else wants to play into it. But in most situations, it's closing the gap between faster strategies and your more slower strategy. Further upsides is that, well, not upside, but a different way of looking at it. A lot of people think about card advantage. How many cards are my opponents up? How many cards am I up? Which, if you think about it and you're losing the gamble, you're playing at that 9-card disadvantage. And if you win the gamble, although you're drawing 3, 2 of your opponents are also drawing 3. And people think, oh my gosh, this is just bad, no matter how you look at it. And I want to change the way you think about that. Instead of, oh, I'm playing at a 6-card disadvantage even though one opponent is playing at a 9-card disadvantage. You are playing even with the table, and one player in particular, is getting basically hosed out of the game because they have to play at that massive disadvantage. It's not so much that you're also playing at a disadvantage, it's that you're playing equal with your opponents. Because what does it matter if you're all drawing? But, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I'll close it there. Let the roasting begin.
All right, who wants to start?
I can start with this one.
Okay.
Okay. Standstill is a funny card. It's cute. It's pretty cute. I think that it ends up posing the person who plays it more than the people who are playing against it. And why is that? I think that's because it's easier to play around it when you didn't go down the card advantage initially to put that stacks piece on the board. And also, if you're a turbo deck, it's very easy for you to just continuously draw and say go and sculpt your hand. So that way, as soon as the standstill goes away, you're going to blow out your load and try to win the game regardless. You know, if you are playing standstill and you let a bunch of turbo decks develop lands on the table, because it doesn't sacrifice itself to lands. Oh, guess what? You can put 5 lands in play and then standstill will pop. As soon as it pops, you add Naus in response and just win the game from there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it stops those strategies as much as you would hope it would. And you're going to eventually want to progress your own board state anyways.
Yep.
So who's going to pop it if it's not you? You know what I mean? That's what I always have to think of when I play it.
Mike, you going to me? All right, Bryce, let me tell you something. Okay, the only reason why you're even bringing Standstill up as a card is because you bought the foil Standstill and you wanted to justify playing the card by itself. Okay, so that's a little precursor to my roasting. Okay, all right. I'll give 2 examples. One play example and one like theoretical. One play example is I'm playing Rock Silas, right? I'm playing Turbo Deck. Like what Adam said, I'm okay just playing the land and passing the turn, because I know either you will pop the standstill or someone else. The amount of times I've seen you pop your own standstill is greater than the amount of times I've seen someone else pop your standstill.
Even me.
And this
You
is why
pop
a
the
lot.
standstill.
This is why I let Kian go before me, because this is the exact same thing I was gonna say. 'Cause I've seen you pop it more times on your own than I have anyone else pop it.
Granted, you were going for a win that turn, but you drew me into like a Force of Will and some other garbage. And I don't think standstill is that powerful of a stacks effect. You're still giving 2 other players 3 more cards in their hand, and I think this format is
Only if you pop it. You're not at
No.
an advantage over those players. You guys are all playing the same.
I know, but the person
You're all
that pops
playing
it,
around
say it's not you who played it, right?
Yeah.
So you're giving two other opponents 3 more cards, and being in a format that's card advantage based, having 3 more cards is the difference between like a game loss or a game win.
It's definitely not rule of law on steroids.
No.
I don't think it's nearly as powerful.
I think
as
it's
rule of law.
cute and I think it has its uses, but I don't like it.
Yeah, well, that's our time. Kian, I think it's time to roast you, buddy.
All right, buddy. All right, buddy, old pal. All right. So I know we've been talking about this as a group recently. Curse Totem. I think.
I thought you were just done there. Like
No,
Curse
Curse Totem. That's it. I think it's a really underplayed card. I know in previous play groups it's been a pretty big hoser. I think it could see some play currently in our meta. There's been a lot of green, like Kevin's been pushing green decks hard. There's a Cody player. There's just other like activated abilities of creatures that I could hose. I don't know. I'm not going to take my full 2 minutes on this because I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think having the ability to stop other people's like acceleration in green because you're playing mana dorks. Cody activation is a hoser because this is off Crypt or Soul Ring mana. And Cody has a hard time bouncing. I mean, it could bounce artifacts, but it basically plays only free creature bounce spells.
Okay, well, let me side with you when you're ready.
All right, I'm done. 1 minute. That's all I need.
All you need is
That's all I need, baby.
I absolutely fucking agree with you.
Yeah.
Don't smack.
I play the card wherever I fucking can. Personally, the only reason why Kevin wants us off of it is so that Frog can go fucking nuts.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. And AJ wants us off of it so that he can go crazy with Cody.
I think even without Curse Totem...
Hey, you had your time.
All right. Sorry.
The card is a fantastic card. It's 2 mana, so it's not hit by misstep. Yes, it impacts you, but you can easily build around it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's it going to do? Hit your mana dorks if you're playing in green?
Kind of a big deal.
I mean, whoop-de-fucking do at some point. I'm done.
Okay, I think Curse Totem is a good card. I think that you can't just throw Curse Totem in your deck. I think that too many decks in today's strategies rely on creatures with activated abilities, especially in the meta that we currently play in, where creatures run the meta. If you're building a specific deck to run Curse Totem, then by all means run Curse Totem, right? Same with like decks that run Humility and other stacks pieces that are similar to that. But in all honesty, this card, it's not just like, oh, it's underplayed because I can just slot it in everywhere. No, it's underplayed because people can't physically play it. It shuts down their strategy. So, I mean, how many commander-centric strategies out there that utilize activated abilities? Like, it's hard to just slot this in any deck. Sure, hey, TNT, put Curse Totem in your deck. Oh, wait, you can't win now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, where are you going to slot this in? There's only a niche number of decks that can play this card, and only a niche number of decks that want this card because it doesn't progress their own game plan. Do you really want to play cards that don't progress your game plan, that really just stop your opponent's game plan? Because you're going down in card quality to have an effect on board that your strategy isn't built around. That's what Stacks is for.
I don't like the card. I'm going to just put that out there. I feel like, I know you think there's a lot of strategies out there that use activated abilities. I find that most decks, the way they try and win, don't actually use activated abilities. There's a lot of value pieces that use activated abilities, but it's very few that the actual win con uses activated abilities, because normally they're considered slow because of summoning sickness.
Like triggered abilities are what we value
Are normally
higher
better
than anything else.
I
Yeah.
think out of like the most used partners, the only one that has an active ability is Thrasios. All the rest of them, they don't really have activated abilities. And those are super prevalent. There's very few combo decks that you can use active.
I don't know. Think about
it's all
Cody,
within the 99.
Najeela.
It's not within their main combo.
There
Except
are
for like
Kenrith, Cody, Najeela,
The big
decks like
three.
that. 5-color, any of those strategies. There's like predominant decks that utilize activated
Protein
abilities.
Hulk, Razzacats.
Baby Blue Farm, all these decks.
I don't win with active abilities,
But
it's
you-
all value pieces.
Yeah, you utilize all those activated abilities though. Like that those all progress your game plan.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it just doesn't do enough unless you're in a strictly stacks deck.
Makes sense. All right, that's that 3 minutes. And now it's time for me. So, a card that I think is very highly underplayed and undervalued when it comes to cEDH is a pet card of mine. It's not really a pet card, but it's a card that I think has a ton of utility. And it goes on to the topic of like the Cursed Totem argument that we just had. Triggered abilities run the format. Triggered abilities are what we value. It's what people build their deck around, is having things with triggered abilities. My favorite type of triggered abilities are ETB abilities. So when you think of ETB abilities, what are some of the best ETB abilities? I don't know, Dockside and Thoracle and Ranger Captain and Recruiter of the Guard and all these different things that activate or that trigger on ETB effects. And a card that I value is Ephemerate. I love Ephemerate. It's 1 and a white. Exile target creature you control and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control, and you rebound it at your upkeep. I think this card is gas. It wins games for certain decks, like decks that have Spellseeker lines in them. It can double up on your Docksides. It can triple up on your Docksides because you play a Dockside, Ephemerate it, double your tokens, and next turn get another Dockside. It can help you win games when you failed a Thoracle. If your consult got countered and you have a way to get your Tainted Pact, you just Ephemerate your Thoracle and respond to the ETB and go for your win again. I think this card is very underutilized as a utility piece. And I think it's really cool because it can protect pieces that you want to protect as well. If you have a creature that is very, very important to your strategy that someone's going to remove, boom, Ephemerate it, and now that removal piece fizzles because that creature is no longer on the battlefield. All these things, I think, help Ephemerate, my argument for Ephemerate as an underplayed card. And that's my 2 minutes.
Who wants to start this one? Okay, Dibs. Ephemerate, it's target creature. There's 2 axes you can attack this card.
You control.
Yeah, which I mean, I don't know if that matters too much, but it's target creature, so they can kill the creature or counter the spell. So there's 2 axes you can attack it. I'm already not a huge fan of that. I've been looking. People are super hyped on Displacer Kitten. I've been looking at deck over deck over deck that are trying to include it, and they're like, okay, how many ETB creatures do I have? Most decks only run like 4, right? Although they are super critical, they are only 4. I feel like most of the time this is going to be a dead card. In some situations, you can do Spellseeker lines, but including it just for Thoracle or just for Dockside, I feel like is not a reason to include this card.
I agree.
That's my thoughts.
I think most of the time it's going to be a dead draw unless you tutor it off Spellseeker. I'll give it credit. Like, it's a good Spellseeker line. It can double up on Docksides. Yes, that's what the card does. But most of the time it's going to be this dead draw. You're going to have, like for you especially, you play some Jeskai Ishai. Maybe your only creature is Ishai out with, 8 counters, and you're like, this card is absolutely useless. I wish it was any other card besides this in my hand right now.
It's weird. I think you died to a bird that I ephemerated yesterday.
Weird.
I
think
you
you
did.
can talk.
I think it's past your 2 minutes, so shut the fuck up. I think I agree. I think it is underplayed. I think it can definitely see some uses, but I don't think it should be, oh, what's this card slot I'm missing? Ephemerate, bam, put it in. I don't think it's that card whatsoever. I think there's other stuff to look at for the same effect. Why run this over a removal spell? Why run this over a
I feel
draw
like
spell?
you'd rather just play a bounce spell
Or that.
in more situations.
Yeah, like Alchemist Retrieval.
because it can target your opponent's stuff as well.
Yeah.
Mike, your thoughts?
So I'm actually in the middle, but I lean more towards agreeing with Adam here because not just saying that because I'm a Jeskai player as well with Elsha, because I do see the same lines he sees in Elsha, but it's more like I see exactly what you guys are saying with, okay, well, for 3 or 4 cards, it's not worth running it at all, especially if you don't draw into those cards or you don't have those cards in your hand. You're absolutely right, Kian, that this may be a dead card if you don't have any of those cards in play. But at the same time, one thing you don't look at is it does have rebound, and it also has the capability with breach as well, which I understand that doesn't say much because everything has value with breach.
Okay, sure. So that was feeding the fish. It's a fun way. It's kind of funny and a little like hypocritical to do that after an episode on gatekeeping, but we're friends.
We're friends here. We already talked about it.
Yeah.
We can shit on each other because we can.
Yeah, it's a fun way to communicate. Yeah. But otherwise, I think that was a great discussion on a somewhat controversial topic in the community. And before we end today, I think we have a few more triggers that we need to resolve in the cleanup. So, once again, shout out to all of our patrons, and special thanks to Cold Ramen and Granddad, who are our $25 supporters. And special thanks to Geo Justin, our $50 supporter. All the support from our patrons has been absolutely amazing, and it's really helping us to improve the quality of our episodes and try to bring more content to our listeners.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Please join the Discord. We have a link in the description below. In the Discord, we do playdays with our Discord members, along with having patron-specific chats, episode discussion channels where you can talk about the podcast, like this episode today, and a whole section dedicated to local Wisconsin play, since that's where we play. Big news and collaborations with all of the Sad Naus boys is that we are starting to appear on your favorite content creators' channels, starting with Mental Misplay on July 19th. So please follow us on Twitter or join the Discord for all updates regarding these collabs. Links will be in the description. And finally, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We have been growing immensely as a channel, and we want to thank all of our listeners like you. The support has been overwhelming, and with that, I think it's time that we end the turn. So thank you again, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.
See you later.